true or false, if Ohio State loses this game, they're still in the playoff hunt. But if Penn State loses this game, they're out of the playoff hunt.
That is a much harder question to ask, right? So the first thing that has to be asked is what does the conference championship situation look like in prior years? We talked about this in regard to the 2014 season where Ohio State got in the conference championship game. It's important to be the conference champion, but the thing that has bolstered teams more than anything that winning those conference championships has been the win frequently over a top 10 team. In Ohio State's example, it was a top 10 win in dramatic fashion in a total blowout. That's what really got them into the playoff in 2014 and allowed them to leapfrog TCU, pun intended. With Ohio State's and Penn State, the first concern is the winner out of the other division is not going to be that highly ranked. Wisconsin has already shot themselves in the foot. They're not going to recover from that. So you're not going to be facing a top 10 division winner almost certainly, even if there's only like one loss on the schedule. It's just not going to happen. So there's less room for error. I think with Ohio State, with one loss, win the conference championship, I still think they get in. The schedule is tough. TCU may not be the elite team that we kind of thought they were, but they're still a really good team. It was an attempt at scheduling a good game. We talk about this a lot. Ohio State needs a lot of props for scheduling tough out of conference games. They won that game in significant fashion. They've got at least a couple other ranked games, maybe with Michigan State and Michigan on the schedule. We'll have to see how the seasons turn out there too. But do that, win the conference championship and a top 15 win. And again, who's else is going to jump them? Is Washington going to, if they win the conference, they've already got a loss. USC already has a loss. So I think you're kind of in a situation where the Pac is going to have a hard time jumping the Big Ten. And, Oklahoma, if that's the case, then Oklahoma makes it, Clemson makes it, the SEC winner makes it, and, probably Ohio State with one loss makes it. Penn State has a harder proposition. The out-of-conference schedule for Penn State is not as good. And you've especially been very vocal in some of the forums that Ohio State needs to get a lot of credit for the difficulty of their out-of-conference scheduling. Penn State scheduling Pitt may be a rivalry, but you can't treat it as a good game on your schedule. Pitt is by no means consistently good enough to do that or to get away with it. And for multiple years now, not having played any ranked teams out of conference is weak. But if you want to be a playoff contender, all the playoff contenders, Clemson or Alabama or Ohio State, Washington, Oklahoma, have all played meaningful top 15 games almost every year. And it takes that to get into the playoff because that's sort of the standard you're looking to achieve. Penn State's schedule, if they lose to Ohio State, it's hard because, again, you have Michigan State and Michigan. They do draw Wisconsin, so they have a chance to maybe beat Wisconsin twice. It's a little unclear how that'd work. I still think they probably get in, but it's a much tougher question. If you're going up against a one-loss Pac team, all of a sudden now your marquee win is Ohio State, and then it's kind of some question marks. And it undefeated Pac team, I think Stanford, right? Stanford's still undefeated, are they not? Yeah, so that's really your benchmark there. I think Ohio State may actually get in over an undefeated Stanford, especially considering the championship game isn't going to be anything in the Pac-12. I don't know that Penn State does, and the margin's just that thin. Even though they have Wisconsin on the schedule and Ohio State does not, the lack of a marquee non-conference game is really going to be held against them by the committee. Again, that's not, by the way, my opinion of who should be in. That's my opinion of how the committee is going to play it.
Yeah, and I think, and that's kind of where I was going with this, is that Ohio State, we give them a lot of credit for scheduling on this show, and I know the responses from the Penn State fans. They're going to say non-conference games, they're going to say SEC, FCS, but look, Auburn opened the season with Washington, and then they have to play LSU, Mississippi State, Alabama, Georgia, that FCS game, and it's actually not FCS because Liberty is not FCS anymore. That FCS game is scheduled between at Georgia and at Alabama. And what you want to do, and it's not so much that you're not a good team, it's that you want to give yourself margin for error. And if you don't play anybody outside of conference, like Alabama this year, they don't have a lot of margin for error because finally they don't have one of these teams on their schedule that's really good. So I get it there's the state history, and there's a lot surrounding that game with Pitt, and it was a big deal when they announced it on the schedule. But you've got that game with Pitt. Don't schedule App State or don't schedule Kent State. You start the season with 4 crappy teams. Maybe App State's okay, but then that's another game it's a lose-lose. If you lose it, it's bad. If you win it, it's no big deal. Schedule somebody huge out of conference because you're now a huge team. And I know you're coming out of some NCAA stuff, but you're killing me because you already get Illinois, you get Rutgers, you get Maryland, baked in conference wins. So that's why that 9th game's not that big a deal. Anyway, I'm over it. It's a rant. I won't go any more on it.